Hello there and welcome to a very, it's going to have to be a long-winded heart explain therapy because we're trying to find out the existence of God. Does God exist? Now I think that we can start this off very logically and rationally with just breaking down some simple stuff that we already know, and then I think it's going to go very deep, very dark, very interpersonal, and it's all down to what your mind basically connects with. So there's two things I need you to be basically on this journey. I want need you to be really patient because we're going to go down several sort of side roads to probably get back to the same point. And secondly, maybe just be open-minded. If you believe in God, just throw it out for this conversation, or if you don't believe in God, throw that belief out, or the belief of, you're an atheist, or you're a scientist, or you believe in certain types of God, in different alternative sort of viewpoints, but not the God that you might think we're speaking about. Just be open-minded, and we'll see if we can get to a rational investigation on the godlike question. Now, first of all, we've got to look at the history of just the word God. I mean, what are we talking about? And when you go back to history, the first ever God was actually a Greek god with different sub-levels of gods within this one god, but it was an idea, it was a story. Now this is very important to understand because it doesn't instantly kill God, because atheists would say that straight away there it's an ideology of man's mind, and it's not real. It's God is just part of our imagination. Now, for me, there's still an argument here for the reason for God, because with that argument, isn't it funny that lots of different civilizations throughout the history of time on this planet has evolved to have the same story as a particular God being the creator? It's almost like it's the same sort of philosophy everywhere, and just because it's written ideology, it's a written form of language, doesn't mean that we have to kill it and deny it. And that's important to keep an open mind about that, because that ties into something else later on in this story. So straight away there we see that God seems to be a sort of psychology or philosophy of old civilizations at its very core. So there's obviously something that is in the imagination, the mind, that wants to speak about this. It's come from humans' imagination. Now I want to say a story that used to be a sort of old sort of motto that's like, I suppose, not really relevant now, but it was this simple saying that man thinks, God knows. Man thinks, separate, God knows. Now, this is a very important sort of little tricky conundrum that we can work out. It seems to be suggesting that human life is a thinking process, and God is superior, sort of like a hierarchy, a species above the human race, and therefore God and the creator. Now when you take this, you see that you can also twist this to that humans may be thinking from this God, and they also might be travelling towards becoming this God. Again, this is another definite thing that intellectuals speak about, and it ends up coming down to your own personal belief system. Now, with this, there's two sort of arguments to this story. The creator and being going back to the start of time and the start of even our evolution doesn't seem to show the God and the love at the earliest part of time. There's no evidence for this. It shows more mechanical properties, more of a process being started, and you know, it's anything above our comprehension to believe anything else at the start. Now, going towards God is really a more rational, logical idea, because we can feel this love and understanding for fellow man, make a greater society where we're basically more united, and we could lead to this heavenly state of utopia. And this seems to be more logical and rational about we creating God ourselves, or we becoming the God that we can't understand within our own minds and time frame, rather than the place where it all started, because there's just no evidence for that. There's just stories and ideas from imagination. So where do we go from here? I think it's quite clear that it boils down to, again, your mind. You have the opportunity to believe in God or not to believe in God. Now, that's not being an atheist and being a religious person. You've got to get that idea out of the, out of your mind. The atheist is the religious person. It is the polarised opposite of the religious person, which means it is both one. It's both the same thing. The no God for the atheist is his God, is his ideology, is his philosophy. So you've got to get rid of that. It's a simple idea, and it comes down to more, to me personally, and this is personal preference, that God is an ideology of purpose and meaning. If we come from God or we're going to God, there's more meaning than no God, and it's just a process. Now, for me, this is where I think people get stuck at. I think they get really stuck around this not wanting to let go of purpose and meaning, which they don't actually ever do. And this is the amazing conundrum, that they never lose it unless they want to lose it. And when they lose it, they see how uncomfortable it is. It knocks your boots off. So you're going to step back into a loving feeling, a feeling of oneness and understanding. And you're going to connect that with God, because it's your mind loves to attach patterns. Now, this attaching to patterns that your mind does is actually going back to the start of the whole story. You see, if you look at what we do with science, we measure stuff and we say that science is correct. But if you look back at a few examples in science, and I've said this on other previous videos, science tends to constantly be proved wrong. Galileo proved Aristotle wrong in certain theories, and then I think Galileo was proven wrong by the likes of Isaac Newton, and then Isaac Newton actually died by believing that metal could be turned into gold, and I'm sure he died of mercury poisoning. These great minds all proved that they were technically wrong, and what we would say is their ideas that were believed for so long in time were actually really, really stupid, naive and unconscious. Now, this is for me crucial about, I don't know why, but the intellectual philosopher of the modern times seems to forget this fact, and they seem to repeat history where they say stuff over and over again as if it's factual, as if it's a moment in time, and they don't realise that everything changes. And now this science can be taken down even more, because science has adopted maths as something more substantial than religion and God itself. And it said, no, look, everything's made from matter. We can start measuring matter now, and we use maths to measure it. So you've got solid maths that seem to be accidentally just there in the universe. And the great thing that I found out about maths, I've gotten a little bit lost with maths on like how the hell have we adopted something that just magically fits into the whole of the system and seems to have just been the computer code for everything. How has that worked out? And I realised that they actually say that 50% of maths is based on a sort of intuition, an intuitive maths, where the numbers that you work out are actually sort of plausible guesses, plausible possibilities, and science works on the same sort of evidence. Let's get some stuff, let's take the most of the reoccurring stuff and let's get some plausible possibilities, and let's find out from the science that we have, which remember is going to be technically proved wrong in 100 years anyway, absolutely stupid unconscious information, and let's prove it as fact. This to me is crucial about the God question, because you see that you have maths, science and all these ideas coming from the human mind, what we're capable of, the capabilities that seem endless, just like consciousness, actually change over 20, 30, 100 years. Now, we can go back even one step before science and maths, even if you don't believe the maths argument. I'll do one better. The fact that I'm talking a language now. Remember, if we was to meet a conscious being out there, an alien that might not even experience consciousness like us, it could be totally irrelevant or different, they would first have to have a language to communicate to us any type of sort of philosophy or theory or where they've come from. Now, they're not going to be using our language. The chances of that are going to be very rare. So the first thing that we're going to have to do is translate a Morse code that we have no idea. It's a Morse code not developed from anything in our history. And I'm presuming they're not going to have anything from our history to do the same back. So this far-fetched imagination, this creative will that can develop the philosophy of an alien landing and communicating with us is immediately stuck, because you can see how we develop language, and before language is really we were the same sort of human being in a certain evolution and process moving forward, and all the brilliant creative stuff come along when our brains expanded really quick over a short amount of time, and we just made loads of stuff, we did loads of stuff, we did it because we could, and we didn't really keep open-minded to the possibility of all the stuff that we're doing might be wrong, and it can be technically changed when somebody else cleverer comes along. Now, for me, this is crucial with the simple question, is there God? Now, I'm not denying God, I'm investigating the answer of God. I don't think it's plausible to even give an answer of yes or no. It makes sense that something created us bigger than what we know, but that I don't think we can comprehend that with our minds. We're incapable. But what I do believe in is the capacity lies in the way that we think now, in this time, and the way that we evolve in the future. Now, I don't believe that we have to input everything into a computer to give us answers on the universe. I think that we're at that sort of stage now, and we see that, you know, we've got so much more to offer than a computer, no matter what you can say about the speed they can do stuff and how they don't get into emotional breakdowns about stuff, but there's still a lot of magic to learn inside our own head. And I think if you really want to know the answer, is there a God and isn't there a God, I think this is a better question for you to to look at and investigate for yourself. I've give you some basic knowledge and information, some factual stuff that I found out, and this isn't the most intellectual stuff, but I find when you watch intellectual things, I feel like the ego wants to tell you their God's honest opinion, and that's truth. This isn't that. This is find out for yourself, and find out for yourself with this way of looking, which I don't hear any intellectual people say. If God isn't real, how does it make you feel? And what does it make you think of? Does it take away all your motivation? Does it knock you into a world of insanity? And don't worry if it does. It's a great understanding that you need to have about the question. And if it doesn't matter, and you feel that it doesn't matter, then ask yourself, what about if God was real? If he came down, he was flesh and blood, a superior being. How does that make you feel? Does that make you feel uneasy that we're not alone? That something did create consciousness and it had a point and a purpose? Or is the meaningless one the one for you that just doesn't make any sense? Which I think is going to be the one that gets most people. We seem to be built for purpose. But don't just ask what you technically believe in. Ask what you don't believe in and see what feelings arise. Because these feelings are the ego defences. These are the unconscious, stupid, ignorant you that thinks God is real. Atheist point of view is real. Scientists are definitely right, the world is round. And you can't get out of that closed mind. I'm saying, if you're going down this rabbit hole, and this is an important question for you to get out of mental health, to feel a little bit of love and hope, then it's very simple. Find out what makes you uncomfortable in every area and aspect of your life. Every single question. What is life? What is reality? What is mental health? What is anxiety? What is love? What is true love? Why can't I do anything? Keep asking. Find out when you hit the uncomfortable bit, that's when you're going to grow, expand, learn, become intellectual, become intelligent, expand the mind. And what you're going to do with this expanding of the mind is be able to break down more questions quicker and adapt to surroundings that change quicker. And you're going to avoid mental health, you're going to avoid bad problems, you're going to avoid bad relationships. The quicker that you learn this intellectual stuff, your IQ will go through the roof. And I'm not saying that you're going to be, you will even get to the point where you realise that the intelligence that we measure in humanity is batshit crazy. The intelligence that we measure in humanity is merely the ability to memorise information. That is all that intelligence is. The ability for someone to memorise information from textbooks, and these textbooks are even plagiarised over and over again, where nobody even knows they're plagiarised. We haven't even woke up to that. Lots of stuff to get your head round. For me personally, it doesn't matter either way. Now I think that to me just sounds like rationally the best thing to say. I can give you a certain specific theory, but it's only ever going to be a theory of nonsense that's going to be disproved by myself in a week's time, because that's how much I think about this stuff. So the point of saying it is ridiculous, but the point of saying what those things do, if you take away the answers or you get the answers, what that does, if you can imagine that, now that's important, because that stirs up stuff inside you that you need to work out, and you need to know this.